Coach V Show, your Hollywood radio show for personal development with expert insights and interviews to help you, me, and we work to be our best and live our best life. Offering to you success frameworks, life lessons, and behavioral models. Should you believe it would bring a positive impact to your life, that you subscribe to it and deploy it all over your life, leadership, and business. Broadcast from Dash Radio Hollywood Studios, powered by Island City, where the beach meets the streets, right here on the Coach V Show, where iron sharpens iron. Together we rise. Today, I am juiced to have one of the legends that I have followed for a very long time. A Utah great, went on to the NFL and is doing so many ventures right now. I am just excited to present his story for the world audience, just to take in and then apply what it is through his life lessons. It is that we can all gain wisdom from, is to apply it into what it is that we do. Mr. Steve Fifita has self-proclaimed himself to have been wandering the desert for nearly 40 years. And in his wandering years, he says that he was successful as a player at Fountain Valley, went on to the University of Utah, who just had a great win against Oregon. And then, yeah, baby. And then had a couple of short stops in the NFL with the Dolphins and the Patriots. And he says he's also been blessed to marry his high school sweetheart, Heidi, and have four daughters, Michaela, Nia, Malia, and Pepper. And so that's the Dolphins. I can now see the promised land, he says. He feels that he is now a leader of a movement called Impression. And he coaches currently one of the biggest and most powerful high school football programs in America at the modern day high school Monarchs, and is part of the OC Buckeyes. Island City family, Dash Radio family, and the Coach V Show family. Welcome to the show, your boy, Steve Fifita. Steve, welcome to the show, man.
Coach, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Man, you got so many things going on, but let's start your childhood years, introduce the family here on the show and everybody that's watching. Like, who are you? Where do you come from? Who are your parents? And let's unpack, your early years of childhood, please, Steve.
Yeah, my parents are Steve and Lita Fifita. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, Orange County, California. I have two brothers, three sisters. Yeah, we grew up in a good home. We were well off, but my dad, he worked hard. He worked hard for us to have a lot of the things that people in Orange County had. My dad worked hard for it, and growing up, my dad yachted every day. So if we had a day off, we were going yachting. So it was like kind of bittersweet when you had a day off. You knew you're going to work. But that's how we were raised. We were raised with a close family. Worked our butts off, but everything revolved around, similar to what it is now. Faith and football and family were kind of the pillars of my childhood.
Faith, family, and football. Talk to us some more about the family before we get into the football portion. About your brothers and sisters. What are the memories that you remember that really forged the experiences as family? As your dad's out there yachting, you get off of school. I mean, there are no off days when you're in the Tongan family. There's chores to do at the house, right? You're going to just go help out and with the family business. Talk about the family dynamics for us first. How was that? And what are some life lessons that you carry on and now really parent your daughters and with your wife, Heidi, in how you approach family today?
I just think one of the biggest lessons is, one of the biggest positives is that we grew up so close. We always put each other before self, and we were our best friends, right? So even to this day, my closest friends are my family, and it's kind of weird to some people that I don't have too many friends outside of my family, including cousins. But that's how I grew up, is just, I didn't know that you had that many friends outside of your family, like most people. Like my wife thinks it's kind of weird that my best friends are my brothers and sisters and cousins,
Right.
instead of having like a real best friend where you can escape to. So that was always a
Right.
positive, and we've grown up and we still live like that. So anytime there's an event, like even the OC Buckeyes, I coach the OC Buckeyes because that's my brother's organization. And that's my little nephew's on that team. So it like means a lot to me to coach them. And it's just volunteering, so you're out there putting in hours and hours for free. But you're doing that because that's how you grew up, like we have another coach who's on a younger team, but he's the same way. He just coaches his nephew's team, and he doesn't have a kid on it, but he puts in all this time and effort. Again, because I think that's a big thing in our culture, is just to, you serve your family members, you put them above yourself. So that's the biggest thing that I remember from growing up, that we grew up like that. We had to always share everything. But one of the memories I was talking about, and I think it's something that gets neglected, is like some of the negative that I grew up with that sticks with me is, we were so close, but we were also like, sibling rivalries get heated. And so one of the things I always talk about is like me and my brother would fist fight, and it get heated like really bad. However, like even me and my sister, it get heated arguments. You'd say stuff that you'd probably regret later, but it never really got addressed after. It's always kind of like I've seen memes on this, but it's like the Polynesian just comes into the house, and after a fight, and all they do is like, "Are you ready to go eat?" And instead of it being an apology or addressing it, it's just like brush it over. You guys go grab something to eat, and it's water under the bridge.
Right.
But for a long time, that was just something that I held like resentment and was so angry because I never got to really, fully express myself in those situations. And even after the fact, it was just kind of like, all right, everybody has to move on, even though maybe, like for me, sometimes I wasn't ready to always move on. There were things that I'd want to get addressed. So those are just a couple, like one of the positives and some of the negatives that kind of got me to this point. And these are kind of the things that I'm starting to see now in my journey that both helped me and hindered me a little bit.
Those are some valuable insights. In that, let's talk about, well, where did you go to elementary school there in the OC? Where did you go to junior high? What was that like, and where was that in HB?
Yeah, so I went to Sunview Elementary, and there were two, I had two other Tongan families, my cousins that stayed in the neighborhood that, we'd all walk to school, and we went to school together. There was Manoa and Ninoke were around my age. We're all the same age.
Right.
But Ninoke was a grade lower than us. So we did everything together, and again, even to this day, we're still always together and doing stuff. But so we went to Sunview together. Then from there, we all went to Springview, again, still in Huntington Beach. And those were good days, same. And then from there, we all three went to Marina High School. And it's pretty funny because our Marina High School, our freshman team went 10-0. We beat, I remember we played St. John Bosco. That was our closest game. We won by like 2 points.
Right.
Anyways, after my freshman year, I get kicked out of there. I get in trouble and get kicked out of there. So then I end up going over to Fountain Valley, which is another local school around the corner.
Okay.
But then that kind of opens up the rivalry of, Fountain Valley playing against Marina, and me playing against my cousin. And obviously there's not many Tongans, or I don't know if that's obvious, but there weren't many Tongans around the area at the time. So it was an interesting dynamic when we, would play against each other, and you have family on the other side. And
Yeah.
It's a little bittersweet, and which is funny because, this Friday we would play Servite in the Southern Section state championship for the Southern Section. And my nephew is the quarterback of that team.
Right.
So, yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic whenever you have. So my cousin Noah, who I told you about, I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
He's the offensive line coach there at Servite. Noah, who's named after him, is the quarterback there. And then my brother-in-law is a defensive line coach at Servite. And then,
Right.
I'm at Mater Dei. So
Yeah.
it's going to
Oh.
be an interesting Thanksgiving.
Yeah. 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 And then so at Fountain Valley, let's talk recruiting and who was looking at you and what was your thought process in recruiting and how you and your family approach recruiting for the listeners that have kids that are currently either in high school or me. My son played his first at 9 years old, played flag football, and we're going to see if that's going to carry in. At some point, we're going to play tackle football. Of just how to approach, the future while you're in high school. Talk us through that, please, Steve.
Um, my perspective has changed a little bit just because I've been a college coach and it's been so long since I got recruited.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But when I was in high school and getting recruited, it was very slow. We didn't have huddle and all that stuff, obviously, back then. There wasn't as much exposure. And the only reason I got to the University of Utah is because one of my high school coaches named Jimmy Nolan, he played at Utah and had a good relationship with Kyle Whittingham, who recruited the area at the time. And he just came by to see me, and he came by, saw me, and he's like, I love the film. I love the personality of this kid. However, he just doesn't meet the measurables of what we're looking,
And what were you? Go over the measurables, because I think this is a great lesson for coaches and for players and athletes' families.
Yeah, measurables are just really things that the coaches can see and measure, right? So they want a guy who looks a certain way. Like for a D lineman, they usually look for about 6'2" and up. Whereas I'm at 5'11". They like guys to be, about, in high school, probably you can take a guy from like about 260 and up there, just depending what caliber or what level the colleges are looking at. But yeah, it's mostly just them looking and seeing what they want, basically from taking it from the paper and looking at a person, and if they meet those requirements. And I obviously didn't fit the bill.
Right. And then so how did that all connect?
Yeah, so Kyle came and he liked me. He liked the video. They actually had a couple other guys that they liked better. So when I actually signed to Gray Shirt my first year, right? And they said, well, for sure, bring you in next year. But if something opens up, we'll get you here a little sooner. So something didn't open up in the fall, but in January, I got to get out there because something happened. So I got out there in January and actually had a spring football before I even had a fall. Year. So I kind of had a head start. Yeah. So I gray shirted and then red shirted when I was there. So, there's guys that finished a couple years before me, and they're like younger than me, and they're like, Steve, how'd you do that? And I was like, like I got lucky, I guess. But so I wasn't highly recruited. I actually played fullback and nose guard, so it was a weird mix. Boise State came and recruited me to play fullback.
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii recruited me. I went on a trip there, but they never ended up offering. And then I had Montana, FCS school, who is actually a power. I didn't realize, how good they were at the time. And same with Boise. There's this funny story that the coach came in and he goes, they offered me. He's like, what do you think? And I go, I want to go to Utah. And he goes, Utah? We kick Utah's ass every time we play them. And I just laughed like, do you really? As a kid, I wasn't too familiar with college football at the time. And now the kids have more insight to what, programs are. But I think a lot of kids still get lost in the limelight of names and things like that. Whereas if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I know now, I would have jumped on that Boise thing, and I would have loved to go and play fullback there instead of being a D lineman and just eating blocks, maybe carry the ball. I guess fullback is not a very glamorous position either, though.
Yeah. Because Boise's offense has always been very multiple, so it's always an exciting place to play on. So then you get to Utah, you redshirt. How did playing time work out? And talk us through your maturity process and how, at least then, you thought about how to approach getting on the field and being a mainstay in the defensive line there.
Um, yeah, it was interesting because they brought me in, they labeled me as an athlete, right?
Right.
So they said, if it doesn't work out playing D line, I'd have to lose some weight and play fullback. And my redshirt year obviously didn't go great. I was there in the spring, and I didn't do enough to be able to get on the travel roster. So they decided to redshirt me. And then so that spring going into my freshman year was a rough spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, a couple clips I still remember vividly, like Shoni Boha was still playing O-line at the time.
Yeah.
So he became a really good D lineman, but he was playing O-line at the time, and he comes off the ball and knocks. He hits me and knocks all my chin straps come unbuckled, and I'm running around like my helmet's falling in my face. And after that practice, I remember just sitting at the weight room, and thinking like, man, maybe I'm not made for college. Like maybe this is different. Maybe I got to go play fullback on offense, but maybe I'm not cut out for this. Because Shoni at the time was a backup, and I'm like, man, backups are doing this to me.
Right.
What's it going to be like when I get in with the big boys? But no, I just put my head down, and fortunately that year came, and I got a lot of playing time. I was backing up a guy named Lavale Sape, who got drafted, and I learned a lot from him. He's an undersized guy, and I just started to I'd pick his brain and I'd watch how he played, and then I start to mold my game after things that I liked of him. But yeah, then I just grinded it out, and I just realized I was just a young kid, jumping in a big pool in the deep end, and it's all right, So yeah, I was just kind of grinding it out, and once it clicked for me, then I became a starter the next year, and I was pretty successful there, and but yeah, I don't remember the exact moment, but I just remember like putting my head down and just keep going. And I remember watching Sape closely and just learning as much as I could from him. Yeah, and it worked out for me.
Yeah, it did. So how would you characterize your game as a D lineman? What is your game, Steve?
Yeah, I would say, I think this ends up hurting me, but I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I have quickness.
Mm-hmm.
I have good strength, and I would kind of play to, I wasn't great at all of them, except I was really strong, but I would kind of like when I played against people, I'd figure out what they were good at, right? And then, or what they were bad at, and then I'd use my skill set to try to beat that. I was really smart out there. Like I studied film like a linebacker. I knew exactly. So I was always a step ahead. But when I got to the NFL,
mm-hmm.
then you really wouldn't run into guys that had weaknesses, right? So then you had to go kind of strength on strength,
mm-hmm.
right? And then, so that's when I realized like being a smaller guy is a disadvantage, because you got to be so many steps ahead, in the game. So when I got to that level, I couldn't attack people's weaknesses anymore with what I did, and I had to beat them with my strengths. And so my two biggest assets are how strong I am, and then my mental side of the game, right? So I'm very smart. I understand the X's and O's well, but I had to be so far ahead of guys at the next level. It became so draining. And then as a big guy, I never really got in shape, and a big, strong
mm-hmm.
guy. So that was another struggle I faced. But yeah, I would just say like I did a lot of things really well in high school, and I kind of took advantage of people that didn't, that had weaknesses. But when you get to the NFL, there's very limited weaknesses. And if guys are weak, they're really good at what they do, and they cover up for it with that strength. Whereas in college, you just kind of get, like the best players that can do a lot of different stuff. And there's a lot more weaknesses at that level. But in the NFL, like guys know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
The people that are recruiting those guys in are drafting them. They know exactly what they need to get done, and they get people that are good at that. So it's harder to expose people's soft spots at that level.
What's your most memorable game / moments at the U?
My favorite moment is, or my favorite game is, we shut out BYU at we shut them out. We won the game 3-0. And this has always been my favorite moment, because before the game, Coach Witt comes in to our meeting. He's like, these guys haven't been shut out. He says the number. He's like, it's a record. They're on a streak. And we go in there, and our offense has been, they've been playing great all year. And we go in there, it's like a blizzard going on, and we shut them out. And it's a 3-0 game, and the defense wins. And, it just feels good to, have everybody on your back, and then just shutting out your rivalry or your rival and breaking their streak. That was my favorite game. I'd say my favorite moment, probably looking back, but I don't know if it was at the time, but like looking back, my favorite moment is there was a time I got to play running back against BYU, right, and carry the ball. And I get to carry the ball, and I score a touchdown. Yeah. So that's probably my favorite moment, but just, the BYU shutout is my favorite game by far.
Yeah, right. And then, and you talked about, coming over from Marina now over to Fountain Valley, and then you started to feel these like family rivalries, right? I mean, talk to us about the Utah BYU rivalry. I mean, because obviously a grip of cats on that side too, but then you also have a rivalry within the family at Utah. Like, these cats that you're fighting with for a position, and then you also go play against cats that you have to battle for the game. Like, just talk about that whole rivalry and how you approach that.
That was one of the best. That's one of the best game experiences. So I went down there my redshirt freshman year. I didn't play.
Yeah.
But BYU's ranked. I think they're ranked in the top, top 5, right? And they have Luke Staley and Brandon Dolman or something, quarterback.
Yeah.
And we had them on the ropes, right? We had them on the rope. We got them beat. And then all of a sudden they start making this run. And then on their last drive, they run the speed option, right? Yeah. So they run the speed option towards their sideline. And I'm sitting in the stands watching. And then when he pitches the ball, there's nobody there, right? And he runs up, Staley runs up the sideline, touchdown. And I've never been in a place that loud. And that place like starts shaking.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We're at Lavelle, where they started shaking in there. It's crazy, like how loud it gets.
Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite rivalries. But what really intensified is when Urban came and he brought. Before Urban got there, it was a rivalry, but it's still kind of friendly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there wasn't too much. People was talking and doing their stuff, but it wasn't too much disrespect going on. It wasn't like so heated. But when Urban got there, we weren't allowed to say BYU in the locker room. You didn't call them you always called them TDS. And it's the same kind of.
What did you guys call them? What did you guys call them?
We call them TDS. So Urban brought that from. That's what they do at Ohio State and Michigan. Yeah. They call them the team up north, right? So we call them the team down south.
TDS.
And we wouldn't say BYU in there. There was so much there was this on repeat, like highlights of Utah just beating BYU on repeat. Like every TV you looked at in the locker room was just it was just such a different feel than when Urban got there, and it made it even more like intense.
Yeah.
So that it was even more crazy. But yeah, we knew everybody down there. So before Urban got there, we know everybody down there. So during the game, you're like laughing at each other and like, you might help somebody up and you're just having a good time. But once Urban got there, there's no more helping guys up. There's no more. It's just like it really like just drew a line in the sand, and it was like, we're Utah, we're better, and we never lost to them when I was there, or when I played. We lost to them my redshirt year, but when I played, we never lost to them. Right. And then when you see them on the streets, and you see, they come up to Salt Lake a lot. You'd see them around, and you just kind of bump your head, and you look at them and laugh. But yeah, that's one of the best rivalries, I've been around. I love it. I think it's, it's kind of sad that they don't do it as much. But I loved it. That was one of the best things when I was there. The other thing I remember too is once I was done playing there, every single guy I met from BYU, I've loved. Like, I played with John Beck down in Miami. Like, me and him sat and watched the game together one year when I was down there. We had a long snapper down there. But every guy I met from BYU, after playing, I love. But like again, when Urban was there, he just made it so tense and heated. It just felt like you couldn't like each other, and
Right, right.
and after the fact, you realize they're just kids like us, and they're good dudes. But yeah, it was those couple years when we were on a run too. It got it was pretty intense.
That's right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let's team down south. I like that TDS. And so talk about now like the transition from college to NFL. What were some of the things it is that you feel like any person can draw value from in terms of those life lessons, business lessons, leadership lessons? I mean, you played for some big time coaches. Everybody will know their names, like you just mentioned, Urban Meyer. You already mentioned Kyle Whittingham a couple of times. Witt recruiting down in the OC. Now he's the head coach at Utah and doing some great things there for a long time now. He's one of the longest tenured guys out here in the West that has been at one place for a long time. So what are some life lessons that we can draw from that you can give us in terms of transitioning now from your highest level at the University of Utah to now going into the NFL?
Well, I don't know if this is what you're asking, but like one of the interesting things I always thought about, or people ask me about, is like how hard was the jump from going from college to the NFL? And I always thought that the jump from going from high school into college was more difficult for me than going from college to the NFL. So I thought I was, when I got to the NFL, I thought I was very comparable to those people, and even vets. I thought I was very comparable, and I was able to hold my ground. Whereas when I got to college, I was swimming, I was getting knocked around.
Yeah.
I was just a kid, and I kind of always tell people is that when you go from high school to college, you have this time to develop and grow up. You're just a kid, right? You have all this time to develop in college. College is not really the real life. But when you go from college to the NFL, even though your talent is pretty close to what everybody else is, at that business, they don't give you time to grow up and catch up, right? You got to get in there and hit the ground running. Again, even I was more prepared for that, and when I got there,
that's intriguing.
Yeah, but it's just a numbers game, right? So that's how professionals are. It's like everything's a number. It's not always personal. Like sometimes it might be, but it's not always personal. Like so, when I got cut there, every time they were like, "You can play in the NFL. It's just obviously not a good fit here for you right now." But yeah, that's what I'd say is just when you're going into the professional world, don't expect that much time to get going, especially at those high levels, right? So especially like if you're going to a super high level, you got to be ready. And when the opportunity presents itself, you got to jump on it and take advantage. And if you don't, that's what happened to me. I wasn't ready. Opportunity was there, and I didn't work hard enough to make it at that level, and got exposed a little bit. And then I never got another shot after the last time I got cut. I never got another call. Whereas when I was in college, they gave me all the opportunity I had because you're pretty much guaranteed your scholarship, right? And they gave me 5 years to develop. And fortunately for me, in that time, I did grow up. But the NFL, they didn't, I didn't even get, I didn't get 5 years for sure. And yeah, the reps are limited. The competition is stiff. So.
Yep. And then, but I've heard you from day one refer to a couple of coaches and some of the life lessons that you've learned. Name those coaches, position, DCs or otherwise, head coaches that you thought that you drew some really good wisdom and insight from.
Yeah, well, so that's become my life project. I was writing a book about playing for Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and Urban Meyer, right? And so I'm writing a book about playing for those three and lessons I've learned along the way. And when I stepped away from Idaho State, I actually went into therapy. We thought I had a bad drinking problem. And when I was in therapy, I started, I'm writing the book, I'm in therapy, and I'm starting to notice these things that they have in common that I'm lacking. So I developed like this mental model, right? And so you know how earlier I was saying like, or I wrote, you know, in the bio it talks about like the leader of a movement, right? Impression is my movement. So my movement is I want to change the stigma of mental health, and the way I want to do that, I want to do it through story, right? So I want to change the stigma of mental health. Instead of people thinking about it as like medicine for the broken, I want them to think of it as art through reflection, connection, and creation, right? So that's why my business is called Impression, because there's these little moments in your life that just leave this lasting impression, right? So the impression that my story is named after is this saying called "C's get degrees," and that was always my motto for school. That's how I handled school, right? And coaches would tell me like, "Steve, just do enough to get a C, you know, and then you'll get a degree and you'll be able to play football and everything will be good," right? But really what happens is, in therapy, what I figured out is what happens is you're really good at this one thing, right? I'm really good at playing football, and then I'm really average at this other thing, and sometimes even bad, right? And then over time, right, those two have to meet. Like, you're the same person. So over time, those two have to intersect somewhere. And what I was getting is just average results as a person, right? I just became this average person, right? That I end up not loving. So what I've done with that story now, or that line, is I've developed this mental model, and the book's called C's Get Degrees. But now what I talk about is, in each chapter, I talk about a C word, and then the degrees of separation are in how much you invest into that C word, right? So the thing, it starts with if you have a strong core, right? So this is what I saw between Saban, Belichick, and Urban. They have this strong core, right? So Saban is trust the process, right? Belichick is do your job. And then when I was at Utah, you know, Urban's big thing was his plan to win, right? So they have this real simple core, real simple yet strong core. But I don't want people to like get fooled. Like, it just has to be something simple and then that's it, right? It has to be simple, but it also has to be like scalable, right? So you have to be able to advance this into something. So anyways, you start with this strong core that leads to this high level of clarity, right? When you have this high level of clarity, right, then you'll start to see you maximizing your competence, right? You start to maximize your competence, then you'll start to see your confidence starts to grow. When your confidence starts to grow, right, then you'll see your level of commitment goes up as well, right? Then that's where it's harder for you to quit, right? It's harder for you to back down. Your level of commitment starts to rise, right? When you have that level of commitment, then that's where you get this this high level of consistency, right? That's where you start to do the same things over and over. You get this high level of consistency, and then when you get that, then you'll see the compound effect, right? Then, so it's all a wheel. At the center of it, it's this core. Then you'll see these spokes out to each one of these C's, right? And then you'll see these arrows that kind of go around and connect all these things, right? And you'll see starting to create this flywheel, right? And then you create that flywheel. And what really makes that thing spin is when you have like a strong conviction of who you are at your core, right? So core, I say, it has to be simple, it has to be strong, it has to be scalable. But at your core, I also say, you know, I challenge something that's very popular. People say, find your why. And I challenge that and I say, find your core, because who is greater than why? So I think that you knowing who you are is more important than knowing why you do stuff and being motivated from outside stuff. So my big thing is I always did stuff for other people, right? So I did stuff for I went to school and stuff and tried to be successful for my parents. But eventually, again, I was just starting to resent the people that I'm doing all this stuff for, right? Because it wasn't always like just naturally what I wanted. But yeah, so that's like, you know, that one impression of my whole life was, instead of always being, you know, C's get degrees, instead of that always just meaning I'm an average person, now it's become something totally different in my life. And I've kind of just taken that, you know, switched my story up. But yeah, that's the framework I've built from that. And you know, I have actually, my book is 50 chapters, but I just talked about the whole thing about how it's all related you know, and each one of those is, each C in there represents something, and I explain and I just give stories about how, you know, how I experienced and saw it, and where I fell short or where I did well. But yeah, that's the framework I've kind of developed. And the biggest thing, you know, it just kind of goes back to the movement about changing mental health. You know, I want people to think of themselves as like, once you try to go figure out your story and learn your story, you'll see there's power in it, right? You don't have to think you're broken. So you go figure out your story, then you start to rewrite your story, right? So it's, again, just the title of the book used to mean that I was just this average person getting average results. And now it's more of a movement of me, right? Building this cycle in my life, and growing my habits and changing who I am, right? And changing what I think about myself.
Man, that is so right on, because any level of mediocrity in any phase of our lives creates mediocrity in everything in our life. True or not
Yeah.
true, Steve, right?
Oh,
Man,
I love
so
it.
you are spot on. And in that, you just finished your first event. And that's where we are in this segment of the show. For everybody that's just now tuning in, welcome to the Coach V Show here on Island City, where the beach meets the streets. We have Brother Steve Fifita in the house, who is launching this movement called Impressions. And he's telling his story along with doing what he does with family, with the OC Buckeyes, and also at the modern day, which they're on the championship run right now. So in that, Steve, we're to the segment of the show which is promoting in that, and you just shared the C's get degrees, and you said it starts somewhere around with core, clarity, competence, confidence, commitment, consistency. Then now you're able to compound it, and then it really becomes solidified when you gain conviction. In that, like, what is your message to the world, Steve, with all these amazing C's? And man, this is in my this is in my notebook now, so I'm going to be carrying these C's with me everywhere I go. I'm going to start to integrate it in my coaching, because it's so aligned with what I believe and what I've experienced in any form of success or fulfillment, life fulfillment, family, and all that, finances and all that. And it also is congruent and aligned with everything that I coach, teach, and train all over the world. So in that, what is your message to the world, Brother Steve? What is your message to the world?
Yeah, my message is, I think all are artists, right? So I think all of us are artists. I think that my whole thing is try to meet people kind of where they're at. And that's what my movement is. Like, the impression experience we had this weekend, we had it with the OC Buckeyes. But I just kind of wanted to meet these kids where they're at, right? So we put on this red carpet event, where the kids get there, they get to take pictures on the red carpet, right? But the big thing was just like making these kids feel like they're celebrities or stars, and giving them something that they could post on social media, because that's where the kids are right now, right? So that's the start of it. It starts with the red carpet. Kids come in, they're getting pictures, then it goes into this social. Then from there, what we do is, so my big thing is I tell core stories, right? So I'm a storyteller. I think that, again, therapy, the power of therapy is in your story, right? So I tell the core story of organizations, of people, of myself, and impressions. So like, my big saying with impression is, I say, I share my story, I share your story, we all share a story, everything is connected, leave an impression, right? So that the big thing that we did that night was I wrote these commercials, and we created 3 commercials that night for the Buckeyes, and it talks about their core story. So one of them was called Eat. So we had everybody at the table, right there, simulate eat. But I wrote I write the whole voiceover for that. Another one it's called Our Family versus Your Team. Popular. So what we did for that one is we had all the parents and all the players out there, right? And what'll get edited is kind of like a team coming at us, and then instead of our kids going back at them, it's the whole organization of family and parents. So that's that. And then the third one is called Minute Maid, and it just talks about, how it takes time to plant the seed, right? The tree starts to grow. It doesn't bear fruit right away. It takes time, but then it starts to bear fruit. And that'll just document our kids, um, from the youngest ages all the way to now. You know, we have kids in college playing D1 ball. We have a lot of kids playing in this Southern Section Championship. But it just documents that. And that's my biggest thing is, you know, there's power in your story. I want to help you tell it. You know, that's also therapy for me because I'm a writer and I like to write. But I believe we're all artists, and that's what I'm trying to do is help everybody find their art and figure out who they are. And, you know, you don't have to just kind of get stuck being a football player or being a businessman. You can do a lot of different things all at the same time. Like you said, if you're congruent and if you're doing stuff, you know, the right way, I think it'll help you be more successful in everything you do. But yeah, I don't know if I hit the question, but
no,
there's a lot of messages
you
there.
No, you absolutely did. And then in that now, let's go shout outs. Shout out whoever you want, and then we're going to get to the Coach V hot seat and just discuss a few topics to close the show. Who are your shout outs, and who do you want to make sure that in your first Hollywood personal development show that you launched, you know, these C's get degrees? I mean, this is some juice, right? Who would you like to shout out on the Hollywood development show, the Coach V show, Brother Steve?
First, am I doing more than one or just one?
You could do one, you could do 20, you could do as many as you want.
Okay. Yeah, first it just, you know, I'd have to send my love to my wife, you know, to Heidi.
Shout out to Heidi. Yeah.
She's stuck with me through so much. You actually know, who she works for is Rob Pilecki. He has the Washi toilet seat.
Rob is coming on the show in December.
Yeah, she's helping Rob launch Washi. But anyways, yeah, Rob's a good friend of mine.
Right on.
But she stuck through, you know, a lot with me and has watched me grow up. So I'm just grateful for her. You know, my girls, Michaela and Nia, and her name is Malia, but we call her Mel.
Yeah.
You know, I love, and then my brothers and sisters, my parents, you know, I couldn't be, like we had that event and my brother supplied so much stuff. It's his organization that came and supported and did it. And then my sister did everything on there. You know, my sister-in-law, Winona, and my brother-in-law, Kelly Talavo. You know, those two are like, Kelly's like my best friend, and, you know, Winona's always there for everything. Gosh, just on the spot, there's so many people out there, you know, I had so many family and friends there that night that just came in and supported that I'm grateful for. Yeah, so it's funny you keep saying Juice though, because we're called the Orange County Buckeyes, but we call it Juice County.
Oh, do you guys?
Yeah, so we're called Juice County, and like we have this orange, you know.
Anyways, yeah.
But, yeah, no, I don't know. I'm just grateful for so many people that have done so much, and yeah, obviously I couldn't do this alone.
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting because I haven't really wrote all of what I feel the juice is, but I feel like anything that I'm dishing is juice. Because if it does not bring sustenance, some type of vitamin, something, because I'm Coach V, right? And now these vitamin C's that you help me learn today is going to be added to how it is that I articulate and communicate about how anybody can become their best version of themselves. But, you know, we need water. And some people are dishing alcohol. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I just feel like I love saying that's like, well, you know, you're gonna taste the juice and you're gonna feel it, and it's gonna taste right. It's gonna taste good. It's gonna be nurturing. It'll give you all that you need, and that's really what I refer to in terms of semantics and definition. It could be whatever positive it is that you're ingesting or mentally within your soul, right? Whatever that may be. But I just love that whole concept of juice and everything that you're doing too. I think we've connected over a year plus ago, and we've stayed in touch. And today just affirms why it is I think so highly of you. There's a lot of people that have notions and concepts, but be able to articulate it and particularly write it down on paper. Because that's one thing about oral traditions and oral teachings is you can't really have a level of consistency and reference like you can writing, right, Steve? And you
Right,
understand
right.
that as a writer. And it's something that me being 46, I'm just now realizing more than I've ever realized, that how important writing stuff down is. So in that, thank you for the shout outs. Thank you for your message to the world. Thank you so much for sharing your current projects. Let's talk high school football for a couple minutes. As I'm looking as Junior might get into football. And if he does, I'm like, well, I got to be the head coach for his Pop Warner team or whatever. The high school coaches in this area already know that I would be interested in being his freshman head coach. You know, try to make my cheddar, do my deal, be off by 1 p.m. and try to get over there. But it's just amazing how big high school football has gotten. And people are like, high school football in Texas is big and then down south is big. Man, Southern Cal football has always been big. I mean, anywhere there's successful football, high school football is big there, right, Steve?
Right, right,
But particularly at modern day, right?
right.
With the league that you're playing in and all that, how has that experience in? You guys are on another phenomenal run there at Modern Day. I believe one of my childhood best friends in Toko was Kiola Finianofo. He's down there with you, right?
Yep,
Right? Kiola was our pastor's son,
yep.
the late Devita Finianofo, and we were Pomona boys, Halafa boys, all that deal. How is this whole experience, and basically the whole high school world that are into football are watching Southern Cal football right now and trying to see what happens there? You guys are playing Servite this week, and then the show will air on Monday, but you have already played that game. What's the expectations? What's your thoughts? What's your experiences you can share with us, Steve, on Modern Day?
Yeah, so Modern Day has given me, I think it's just God's will. I actually posted something to introduce my event a couple weeks ago. And, I've known for a long time that football is my calling, right? So, what I said was naturally what I thought my calling was to be a coach or a player, right? So when I failed as a player, I was like, all right, for sure it's coaching. And I'm not to brag, but I'm a pretty good coach and I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And then when I, like that, like all coaches feel, but when I was coaching at Idaho State, I kept waiting for my big break to get a bigger job, and it never came. And then, so when I left there, I felt like I'd failed at coaching. I felt like I'd failed at being a player. So I ultimately thought I was a failure. And then I just started this project. And they actually wanted to hire my brother-in-law at Modern Day, and he's at Servite. And he's like, "Nah, I don't want to do it, but maybe you guys ask Steve. Maybe Steve will do it." And obviously, I'm enamored by the thought of coaching for one of the top high schools, a brand name across the country. So I take the job, and then when I get there, I'm thinking like, this is going to be a college. Everything's going to be run like USC or Ohio State. And I get there, and the coaches, like it's not run like a college as much as it's run like they're dealing with kids still. And and so I start to think like, all right, so these guys are operating, obviously at a super high level, but it's not perfect around here like I was expecting. So like, they're still dealing with kids. And then, so that started to make me think like, maybe these standards and expectations I'm putting on myself is too much pressure. And then, yeah, so I take some of that off, and I take some of that stuff off my plate. I'm not as tough on the kids as I used to be. And, I used to be, pretty bad on kids and like super demanding. And now, I'm seeing them more at kind of where they're at. And that's what I learned at Modern Day is like, you got to see these kids where they're at. Anyway, so I get there and see that. Then I'm with these, so the OC Buckeyes, we're actually ranked the #1 team at the 14U level, right?
Right.
In the country.
Yeah.
And those kids, like a lot of those kids, they want to play at Modern Day Servite. We have a bunch on both of our teams. They either come from us at the Buckeyes or the OG Ducks. And all of those kids, they want to play at these high levels of high school football, right? But same thing. So then I start to see the same thing there, that when I started to like meet these kids where they're at, I started to meet these kids where they're at, it was more successful for me, and I was getting more out of them than being super hard on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I was saying about it being God's will is that for the longest time, I thought I was going to be a coach or a player, and I failed and thought I was a failure. But now working with these two really good programs, I'm starting to realize that um, I did, obviously I did fail at those, but it was just the way I was going about things, right? So
Mm.
um, I could be successful without putting so much stress on myself. Um, and we could do a lot of good things. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of God letting me know that, yeah, you can still be a good coach. Um, you are still a good coach, and God kind of restored my faith in myself in that role. But he's also showed me that I do have a bigger purpose, that now I'm taking my coaching, if you'll call it that, and I'm turning it into something different. But all the lessons that I've learned as a player and a coach, now I can apply to something bigger than just coaching. And I just think of God's grace. There was a long time where I'd lost faith in God and I didn't believe in God. And actually, just recently, when my cousin passed, is when I came to it, and I've been battling with this. And he passed in July, and then that's when I started to figure out, and start to see God's hand in so many things. So, yeah, but I forgot where we started and what the question was, but
You were just talking about
that's where I'm
modern-day.
at.
Oh man, there was a brother named Saul, right, on the road to Damascus, right? Had an interaction and a divine meeting with the man, right? Oh my gosh, Steve, that just kind of sounds like, we think we know what we want and that will bring us success and life fulfillment, how we define it particularly. And then we go through life and we're like, okay, my bad. I got
Yeah,
and then Saul goes from being Saul to Paul, and the biggest killer of Christians to, man, the Martin Luther King Jr. of Christianity, right?
right,
That
right.
type of
Yeah,
transformation. And in that, we're coming down to about the last 9 minutes. And so thank you so much for sharing all of that, your shout outs, sharing about modern day. Lastly, before we move that, what position are you coaching, and what is your title there at Modern Day?
yeah. I'm the defensive line coach. Yeah, I'm just an assistant coach. I coach the defensive line. Kind of a one-trick pony. I will say one thing I do. The point I was trying to make about just being out here is that in Southern California, it's like one of the things you see in California, because it's not like this in Idaho. Like out here in California, everything is so competitive. There's 4 teams out here that are in the top 25
In
just in
America?
the country.
Yeah.
Right. So we
Yeah.
have Modern Day, we have St. John Bosco, we have Sarah White and Centennial. All 4 of them are in the the top 25, because I just think that in California things are so competitive. People are just looking for such an edge. That's why it's such a, I think all of California is like that, honestly, but that's
Yeah.
what I've noticed down here is there's just such a competitiveness in California, and people are looking for an edge. And it's not always like, in Texas, when we went and played that Texas team, they were big, they were fast, they were strong, right? But they weren't coached as well as us, right? They weren't doing the little, and that's what I think California is like. You're not just big and fast. That's not going to be good enough. You can't just have talent. You can't just have coaching. You got to put this stuff all together. And that's what I learned at the highest levels, right? You got to put all that things to the highest level, and just kind of goes back to that mental model I was talking about. With you got to have a strong core, and you got to get that whole wheel rolling, or else you'll get exposed. And then that's what it's been like here in California. So it's kind of been a good eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, know that. Well, good luck to you guys throughout the season. Your boy and the family will be here cheering for you. And I got to get Kiola on the show. Kiola, man, if you're watching the show, this book, we're going to book. We got my man from Washi coming on the show in December. We got Rob Polecki. I'm gonna hit up Kiola. We got to get him on the show too, man. And in that, let's talk about this, right? Of knowing your inner superstar. What I tell most people that, man, It's time for you to empower yourself. Stop looking around for permission and authority to be granted to you from outside of yourself, and give yourself that permission. Right? Right, Steve? But the majority of our people can approach, not all, but some of these old school and some of these traditionalists are like, well, you don't move until I tell you to. You need permission. And if we as your family don't feel that this is right for you, man, I'm like, man, that is something that has expired generations ago. And that's some of the reasons why our kids cannot really become their best. So how would you articulate that to a young man, or to the people or the listeners out there? Is like, go get yours. I
Yeah,
mean, you can't figure it out unless you do. Of the thinking, feeling, how you see things and how you say things, it is what you do that's going to tell you everything else. And like you said, yeah, your why is awesome, but you better figure out who you are, because you're the key artist of your stories, author of your masterpiece and
right.
captain of your ship. Only you can do you, right? What do you say about that, Steve?
Yeah, no, I love that. Is so one of the other C's that I'll talk about is, people talk about be yourself. I say, don't be yourself, create yourself, right?
Yeah,
People say
correct.
stay in your lane. I say, don't stay in the lane, create your lane, right?
That's
And the way I say you create is, number one is you find your core. You figure out, what your life revolves around.
right.
And that's what I had to do. My life used to revolve around insecurity and fear, and an identity in football that I was hoping like would make me enough. And that's why I had to make it to the NFL, right? So
Right.
I had to get to my core and figure out like, all right, that's not who I am, right? So first I had to find my core. The next part that I figured out in therapy is, I call it start to scale, right? So you have to start, once you figure out who you are at your core, now you have to start putting that into action, right? So that's why I
That's
call
right.
impression of movement, is because nothing's done just by thinking or writing, right? It's done when you start to put that into action, right? When you
That's
start to
right.
move. So then you put this thing into movement, right? And that's why it's this flywheel. And then you start to get this movement. And then the third part of that, creating, is create your masterpiece, right? So I
Mm,
talk about, when you create your masterpiece, you become the master of your piece, right? You're the one who controls your life, and you start to find this place that you're comfortable with, right? And you start to create this identity of who you want to be. I just like to challenge a lot of like popular sayings, like people talk about be uncomfortable or be comfortable and uncomfortable. Just like to like I hate people telling me what to do, and I hate, so when there's stuff
right.
that's, I hate following the crowd. So when there's stuff that's like really popular sayings, I like to like look into them and see like how truthful they are to me. And like for me, I just like to challenge stuff, and it's all a play on words. But yeah, I'm like, you know, get comfortable just being yourself, right? Figure out who you are. That's when you'll start to scale something, and you start to build something, and that's, like scale and grow, right? You grow this thing into something bigger. And then that's when you start to create this masterpiece. But a lot of people, they try to jump in, like with high school D linemen, they try to jump in and do what Aaron Donald's doing right now, right? When they
Hmm.
shouldn't be starting there. What they should do is they should come in, learn how to get in the stands, right? They should learn
Yeah.
how to shoot
Yeah.
their hand, right? They
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
start with, figure out your core, right? You build
Yeah.
a good foundation. Then from there, all right, now we'll start to put that stuff in and apply it into drills and stuff like that, right? And we'll start to scale that. And then once you get past that level, then we'll start to do this Aaron Donald stuff. But we don't just jump right in and do the drills that Aaron Donald's doing. Right? We start at a different place with these young kids. And I think the hard part for a lot of adults is they don't want to be that young kid and start over. They want to be where Aaron Donald's at. So that's the humbling process for older people, is that, you have to go back a few steps and humble yourself and start over and figure out what the issues are in your life, and figure out what you really want. Then you start to scale that and grow it. And then from there, then you create your masterpiece and your art.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, that's my message is, find your core, then you start to scale it. And then once you do, then create your masterpiece.
that's right. There's a progression to everything, whether you like it or not. And success and life fulfillment doesn't give a damn whether we want to or not. Here are the demands, and there's a fundamental progression to achieving that feat, whether we like it or not. And either we meet it or we don't. True or not true, Steve?
Love it. I love it.
Right. Okay. Here is the last. So we got Steve Fifita here on the Coach V hot seat. And here is the last question that we'll have, even though we didn't pose it as a hot seat question. He really just took off with that and made it. And here's it, just to make sure that the audience understands how important of action is, right? Performance and execution is to results, achievement, and success, right? Here's the phrase, and you tell me what you think about it. Like success and love and faith are all nouns that work better as verbs, but without action, success, love, and faith are just words. Steve Fifita on the hot seat. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. It just reminds me of, faith without deeds is dead, right?
Amen.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying that a lot of people can talk the talk. A lot of people, so the biggest thing for me was scary is that I love to write, and it's easy for me to write and sit in my room and write because I'm just by myself. But it was hard to put on that first event because I don't like to be out in front of people too much, right? And I think it was just how I grew up, to be humble and don't be putting yourself out there, right? So that's something that I had to overcome was, all right, now you have to take your writing and share it with the world, or else you're the only one who's learning from it, right? So, yeah, that reminds me of the same thing, like, right, all of that stuff, faith without deeds is there, success and love, right? All of that is nothing without action and showing it. Yeah, but you have to get out there and you have to move. And I think that's one of the big issues with mental health is a lot of people are talking about mental health, right? A lot of people are writing this stuff down and going to therapy, but not a lot of people are really giving action for these people to start living a different life, right? A lot of people are just thinking and talking about it, and that's not enough. Like you say, we got to get out there and give people something to do with it and make it into a movement. So that's what I feel like I've been here. I've been called to do here. And yeah, you gotta put some it's like the guy who talks too much but he can't fight, like that used to be me, right? I would always have a big bark, but I'm not really a fighter, right? But now I don't have to have a big bark or whatever, but I can share my message, and now I have like some action that people are starting to see behind it, and I'm not just faking I'm not just faking it or talking about it.
No, that's awesome. Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have the last word, and then I will close out and thank everybody for tuning in. What's your final word on that? Anything?
Yeah, no, my final word is that I love being Tongan and that I love the brotherhood, even with all Polynesians, but I'm so grateful for all the little impressions you've left on my life, coaches. We've talked several times, and every time we talk, I leave there with something positive, and that's something that I like to pay forward. That's something I want to do for other young Polynesian kids, and really all kids, but especially to my Polynesian and Tongan kids. I want to be able to pay it forward like you have looked out for me, man. I appreciate all the help you've given me, man. And I actually remember last time, or about a year ago when we spoke, you told me to, Steve, make sure you're able to articulate that stuff and put it in writing. And it's funny that you mentioned that again tonight. Like, build yourself something that you can be known for, like a cornerstone, or I can't remember the exact word you used, but you're like a hallmark speech that you give. And I spent a year just putting all that stuff together, and there's a lot more to that, but I owe you a big thank you, and I'm grateful for that. So no, it's awesome to be here with you.
Man, we're grateful, and everybody it is that might not tell you. All of us are so grateful. Even just for me, the legend of Steve Fifita, and you always kind of chuckle when you hear me say that, but I go down, and my brother-in-law is like, man, you know who Steve Fifita is? I was like, I think I do. Who are you talking about? Man, he was working with JJ, man. Dude's awesome. He played at Utah. I was like, he did? Oh yeah, that's cool. But man, like even I'm not even around you, never really met you in person, but you have had a huge impact on my family, and my nephew has gained so much from you, and I'm sure so many of the people that you cross paths with and help on the football fields every day, that those people will remember you for a long, long time. Thank you for coming on the Coach V Show, and for everybody that's out there tuning in, I just want to thank you for tuning in to the Coach V Show with your boy Coach V and your boy Steve Fifita. And really the reason why we're doing these shows and Steve is doing his stuff with impressions is not for just the sake of success, but for the sake of being your best. In doing so, we realize the best of our abilities, and that everything that we would dare to dream and work for can be achieved. This is how Steve Fifita and your boy Coach V lives, all about faith and family, grateful for God's amazing grace. And just a reminder, here are some C's that Steve brought up for you to think about and subscribe to: is figure out your core, gain that clarity, increase your competence that now increases your confidence so that you'll be more committed, have the consistency to now compound what it is that you do, and then have the conviction to really turn and work that flywheel till the cows come home. So from your boy, Coach Steve Fifita, and your boy, Coach William, thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in next Monday, Motivation Monday, right here on the Coach V Show on Island City, broadcast from Hollywood, California, Dash Radio Studios. Your boy, Steve, Coach V here. Peace.